Hello, my name is Bradley Presley, and I did my final presentation over the Cherokee Nation. I chose the Cherokee Nation because I am a Cherokee Nation tribal member, and I wanted to be enlightened on my own tribe's government and also their judicial system. So go ahead and switch over to PowerPoint. So the Cherokee Nation court and governmental system. First, I analyzed the treaties by the Cherokees. One of the most infamous treaties is the July 19th, 1866 treaty. This essentially ratified almost anything that had happened prior to that point. It ratified the ownership of slaves for the Cherokee Nation. It declared that past treaties which were done with the Confederate South were a pretended treaty. It nullified the sale of Cherokee lands and required the tribe reimburse, stating all sales of farms and improvements on real estate made or pretended to be made in pursuance thereof are hereby agreed and declared to be null and void. Also in there it mentioned 160-acre parcels of land which would be allotted for improvement for the Cherokee Nation. And it stated the desire for the United States to be friendly with the Cherokee Nation. The history of the tribe. Here on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the original extent of the Cherokee claims. As you can see, it was very broad and covered a broad spectrum of states. And then by 1791, it had diminished down to the middle red portion there. And then by the late 1838, prior to their removal, the Cherokee Nation had essentially diminished down to just that small red circle there in the right hand picture, what is now the modern day Georgia area, and it was at that point that they started to find themselves in some legal battles and various situations with the state of Georgia. And then came Cherokee Nation versus Georgia of 1831, in which the tribe sought to file an injunction which would prevent the state of Georgia from being able to force the Cherokee Nation out of their territories. However, the courts refused to actually hold this case or see this case because they said that the Cherokee Nation was a dependent nation. They didn't necessarily view them as a sovereign nation. They viewed them as a domestic dependent nation that was basically under the protection of the United States government. This created a series of events known as the Marshall Trilogy, and then eventually led to Worcester versus Georgia of 1832, where the courts actually finally agreed with the Cherokee Nation, and finally the tribe was ruled as a sovereign, and the courts held the tribe could not be forced from their lands. However, the president during that time was President Andrew Jackson, and Andrew Jackson very strongly opposed to the findings of the Marshall Trilogies, and he very much sought out to make sure that the Cherokee Nation was removed from their territories. This goes back to the old guardian of the ward type mindset, which is mentioned many times through history with Native Americans. But of course, eventually, the Cherokee Nation was forced from their territories, and came through the Trail of Tears, and they were forced into what is now Oklahoma, and this is the region that they ended up occupying during that time frame. And this here is the actual territory the Cherokee Nation currently holds here in the state of Oklahoma. So with that, we'll go ahead and look at the government organization that the Cherokee Nation holds. They have boards and commissions, which are broad range, but they can cover constitutional conventions, elections, taxing, gaming, and environmental protection. All of them play an important and essential role for the success of and safety of the government. They also have emergency management. These teams prepare and respond to disasters and emergencies that occur within the Cherokee Nation. And then they have executives. The executive branch of Cherokee Nation is charged with the execution of laws of the Cherokee Nation and establishment of tribal policy and delegation of authority is necessary for the day-to-day operations of all programs and enterprises administered by the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation has a judicial branch. This consists of 3 distinct tribal courts, which is the District Court, the Supreme Court, and the Healing and Wellness Court. Each court is open to every person or entity in a 14-county jurisdiction. They also have legislation. They have a council lawmaking branch in the Cherokee Nation, which has 17 elects. And then they have a very extensive police force, which is actually, for a tribal police force, it's one of the more prolific sort of police forces, where they actually consider their police force full-fledged marshals. And they have a very broad jurisdiction throughout the Cherokee Nation. They are also cross-deputized through 50 different counties, and they have over 32 different marshals. And then they have their procurement department, which handles any situations which would arise as far as doing business with the Cherokee Nation. So, looking at the court history for the Cherokee Nation, this is the original Capitol building in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. This was the court system that was used by the Cherokees for a very, very large amount of time, actually up until 2018, in which time the tribe finally decided to go ahead and move their court system into a different area. This building here is very historic and covered a broad spectrum of cases and events that have transpired over the years, and now it's actually just going to be a historic building for the tribe. So this is the current court location. This is what it looks like inside. It's located on the 2nd floor of the Cherokee Nation complex on Muskogee Avenue in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. So the Cherokee Nation has a pretty extensive constitution. The Cherokee this is a statement that's in the actual document, and it says, "We the people, the Cherokee Nation, in order to preserve our sovereignty, enrich our culture, achieve and maintain a desirable measure of prosperity and the blessings of freedom, acknowledging with humility and gratitude the goodness, aid, and guidance of sovereign ruler of the universe, and permitting us to do so, do ordain and establish the Constitution for the government of the Cherokee Nation." What does the Constitution cover? Well, it's very extensive, but to just kind of narrow it down, Article 1 covers the federal relationship of the tribe with the United States government. Article 2 looks at territorial jurisdictions and how the tribe will handle those. And Article 3 looks at the Bill of Rights for all individuals and how each individual will be held accountable, but also have particular rights. Article 4 covers citizenship. Article 5 is the distribution of powers within their government. And then Article 6 looks at the legislative powers of members of their government. The current laws and rulings, almost any legal proceeding which has taken place is listed here on this website at cherokee.legistar.com/legislation.aspx. I did just a quick search over major cases which had taken place here in 2019, and I was actually able to find 41 records on file from this year alone. This covers a broad spectrum of laws, and then also virtually just any sort of hearing that has taken place in the Cherokee Nation court systems. So the jurisdiction of the courts and the tribal courts and how are the cases handled? Well, the Cherokee Nation tribal courts are open to every person or entity within a 14-county jurisdiction of Cherokee Nation in northeastern Oklahoma, unless specifically limited by statute. But the district court handles matters in the civil, criminal, and juvenile realms, and then their Supreme Court hears cases of appeals and other matters as may be conferred by the statute. Also, this court is located in the Cherokee Nation Judicial Branch at the address of P.O. Box 1097, Tahlequah, Oklahoma. A lot of the things which the Cherokee Nation own are actually in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. This is a list of the current judges and Supreme Court justices who currently work for the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation Bar Association, it actually, to become a member of the bar for the Cherokee Nation, an attorney would have to actually not only pass the bar, but they would actually have to also be in good standing and registered through a bar in the state in which they practice. In addition to that, the Cherokee Nation requires that they submit an application to the tribe outlining, the brief information about them, who they're in good standing with, who they're registered through, and then also in addition to that, they require attorneys pay a $15 or $50 annual Cherokee Nation bar fee. There's a very large and extensive list of appointed attorneys, prosecutors, and attorney generals that are able to work for the Cherokee Nation or have worked for the Cherokee Nation, and those can be found at CherokeeCourts.org/portals, Cherokee Courts Documents Bar Association website, listed here in the middle of the page. And then in addition to that, the bar dues, which I had mentioned above, of the $50 annual national fee, and that can be found at the website here listed at the bottom of the page with the Cherokee Courts Portals and Documents Bar Association. That website there lists the current fees which are to be paid to the courts. Interestingly enough, I actually was able to find some court rules for attorneys, and then I guess even people who attend the court systems for in the Cherokee Nation court systems, or even if they are reporters or anything such as that. They actually have certain rules that they have to follow, and then certain traditions and systems, I guess. But one of the rules is attorneys actually have an attendance policy in which they have to meet. In the rules, also outlined is arraignments and initial appearances, and then it outlines bonds and how to handle bonds, and the withdrawal of counsel if someone was to withdraw their counsel. And then interesting enough, in there was a courtroom conduct, tobacco use, the use of cell phones, the prohibiting of video, photos, and broadcasts. And then it even outlined in there of where to sit in the courtroom, which I found to be kind of humorous. And this can be found at this website that's listed here on the bottom of the page. So what does tribal sovereignty mean to the tribes? Well, if not for tribal sovereignty, then the tribes wouldn't be able to function. They wouldn't have necessarily the property that they do have. And I feel like their sovereignty is highly important, as shown through the course of history, in particular with the Cherokee Nation and some very infamous cases, in a time where their sovereignty was very much challenged. The Cherokee Nation faced the loss of their property. They were forced all the way across the country, and that was when that was a time in which the United States government was actually recognizing their sovereignty. So the sovereignty is very important in every regard for tribes, but I've listed here some things in which sovereignty is most important, or so I feel. And one of those is to enrich and maintain the culture, to maintain a measure of prosperity and freedom, to have healthy jurisdictional boundaries. If the tribes are constantly having to fight jurisdictions and that sort of thing, then their sovereignty is definitely being challenged. And so that's very important to have that. And then and I think also where I had mentioned culture above, obviously every aspect of sovereignty protects tribal culture and identity. It helps the tribe to be able to function in the way that they desire, in the way that is culturally desirable to them. And that leads into the tribe providing safety and laws for its citizens, which is very important in any community, to have laws which protect, it protects property, protects freedom, protects rights, and which leads into good business practices, and allows the tribe to be more prosperous, and and to just be a full functioning unit and functioning government. So that's just a few things that tribal sovereignty covers, but obviously it's very important for tribes to be able to exercise this in any capacity that they can. Here's my references. And references continued. All right, that concludes my PowerPoint presentation. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. I appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.